Hello friends and potential friends. I was recently tagged in a challenge by Dan at Dan's Organic Food Forest Garden. He wants me to discuss 3 things that I've learned during the 2019 gardening season. I'm a little bit late in answering this challenge, but still wanted to get it done for my friend. Dan lives about a few hours south of me in Florida, in an HOA, and he has turned his backyard into an extremely productive food forest. He grows a lot of temperate and tropical plants and vegetables and produces a lot of food for him and his family and friends. So if you haven't checked out his channel, go take a look. I don't think you'll be disappointed. So let's get started on what I've learned this year. In the past, you may have heard me talk about how much shade I have on my property and how this creates issues when I'm trying to grow my garden. Well, one of the things I learned this year is that sometimes what we see as a challenge can also be a benefit. See, for several years I've been trying to grow various kinds of squash and melons without much luck. I thought this year was going to be no exception. I planted out spaghetti squash in the spring. They developed powdery mildew, started dying off when the heat of the summer hit, and I thought I was going to lose them all. But I had one squash plant that was left over when I filled up my vine garden or bed, so I planted it over here in my catch-all bed, which quite frankly is one of the shadiest parts of my backyard. As you can see, sometimes that shade can be a benefit, because this plant looks like it's trying to give me a squash. I hope it makes it. I hope it survives. This is October. That thing should have died a couple of months ago, but because of the shade it keeps on growing. So I've learned that I have to look at my challenges and benefits a little bit different sometimes, because I think in this case the shade is what saved that plant. And I may actually get my first squash out of that plant. I've been suspecting for several years now that where I live is kind of a somewhat unusual microclimate, and it doesn't always agree with the official forecast for my city. See, the official forecast is taken at the airport, which is about 5 miles from my house and about 2 to 3 miles farther to the west of my house. One of the things that it doesn't take into consideration is that I've got a very powerful heat sink located about a mile east of me. It's called the Atlantic Ocean. And the temperatures of the water in the summer is always lower than the temperature of the air, and that helps to moderate the temperatures in my area. Not only that, between me and the ocean, I've got the Halifax River, which is almost a half-mile wide here near where I live. Sea breezes come in most every afternoon, though we can't really count on them lately, but they blow across that water and then into my property. I've been suspecting that in the summer I usually see about 3 to 4 degrees lower temperatures than what the official forecast gives, and in the winter I tend to be about 3 to 4 degrees warmer than what the official forecast is. Well, that's been a suspicion of mine for quite a while, so this year I decided to find out whether my suspicions are true or not. So I installed a weather center, and so far I've had it up for a couple of weeks now. It seems to be confirming my suspicions. In fact, right now there's a fairly nice breeze blowing through here, coming off the ocean and off the river. So the lesson I've learned here is that even a few miles difference can make a drastic difference in the kind of weather that you have to deal with. And you also have to take into account as many factors as possible in figuring out what your particular microclimate is. Finally, one of the lessons that I learned this year may not be strictly garden related, but I'm including it as such because it produces food. This year I learned about the American beautyberry. For years I've had these things growing in my yard, and I always believed they were just a weed, had real pretty berries on them, but I always thought those berries were poisonous. Well, this year I started hearing beauty berries here, beauty berries there. And basically this lesson has left me with a dozen jars of some absolutely delicious beautyberry jelly. So look around your property and see what wild edibles you might have growing. This is just one more that I've added to my menu. And finally, I'm expected to call out 3 other channels, see if we can get them to take part in this challenge. So I'm going to pick on Joey at My Slice of Heaven Outdoors. He just recently did his final garden update for the year. Lives up in Missouri, I believe. And his season is pretty much winding down. So I'd like to hear what he learned this year. And then there's my friend Carlton up in New York at the Pharmacy Seeds Network. Now, strictly speaking, he's more of a farmer than a gardener, but I'd really like to hear any lessons that he learned this year. And to round things out, Anna at Mimsey's Garden. She's just finished up her first year of gardening, and I would really like to hear what she's learned. That's it for me. I'm going to post appropriate links in the description below. I hope y'all will check them out. I hope my friends will take part in this challenge, and I'll see you on the next one.